Hey, morning, Kevin. How are you this morning?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, very good, thanks. Another busy week, but a productive one.
Yeah, it seems to be a consistent theme. It's a busy week every week at the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
So this week we're going to talk about you, which is excellent because it means that all I've had to do is prepare the questions, and then it's really down to you to talk about the story.
Okay, I find this hard to prep for as well because it's just like my
That's
brain.
good. There should be no prep at all.
There's not, so this could go either way.
It could go either way, exactly. So let me just I've written down a few questions just to kind of start the prompt. So let me just prepare myself so that I've got things in front of me. There we go. So let's kick off with what happened before Oxford Brookes? Kind of what were the highlights?
Yeah, so the highlights, I think, even at school, honestly, at school, I thought I was quite good. I think it's not until later in life that I realized, maybe I wasn't. And I think that, yeah, I was like top middle set at school, maybe like in the top third of that class, I guess. And I think that just proves everything's relative. It's like, to me, yeah, I was doing quite well because you just compare yourself to who you're surrounded with. And I think, yeah, as I've met people that have definitely achieved a lot more, like I was a typical C grade student. I think I got 1B, which was in business, which I think is quite telling actually, in terms of that was my best grade. And that was what I was really passionate about. Even at the age of 16, I found that much more interesting. And I got a D in IT. I found it's all right, but I kind of got into it. But to be honest, my dad pushed me into computing because he was in the print trade. And so he saw that he did very well out of the print trade in the early days, did an apprenticeship, and it was definitely a thriving industry. But he could also see that digital was starting to take over. And I think in his mind, if he could do it again at this point in time, computing would be the way to go as opposed to print. And it's quite interesting that I've gone from, or he's kind of been involved in more of like a print, I probably would say agency in some ways, through to kind of myself, it's more the digital. So it's like that generation to generation as it's evolved in some ways. So I don't even think I appreciated, maybe even till now, but
that was a really smart piece of advice. That was a really smart piece of advice.
It was, because at the time, a lot of my friends did sports science and they haven't really gone on to do anything within sports science. Like, some of them have good careers, but that level of education at college was a good laugh, but probably not really skills that would set you up for a career. And so most of my friends at college are actually kind of more on the sports science side. Of those were the people that I hang out with, but kind of on the computing side, that was where I saw there was a potential career. I was bad at stuff that was too technical. So information architecture, programming, I gave it a go. But to be honest, there was not a passion there. And I failed my second year at Bournemouth University. And so then I transferred to Oxford Brookes. And that, I think, for me was a big kick out the arse, honestly. It was okay, well, you can't get away with just enough. And that's always what I did up until that point. It was like, how do I scrape through an exam? How do I do this and put the minimal effort in to get what I need to get out of it? And I think that was a big turning point of, wait, if you just aim close to the line, you've just missed it. And now it's like, it's similar to if you want to grow an agency. If I feel like in some ways the guarantee to get to £1 million is to aim for 10. Like, how do you aim bigger? And if you get somewhere close, then you've done pretty well. But actually, if you're aiming to do the minimum that you feel is acceptable, for me, that's definitely not working. And I've said to you before.
But why? I mean, interesting, Kevin. Why? So because accepting, low standards, a lot of people do every day. But why for you is that not an option? Because it clearly isn't an option because of the success you've had. So what was it that kind of like you went, actually good enough isn't good enough?
There's a few trigger points, but I think sometimes it's thinking of the alternative and thinking, if this doesn't work out, what am I doing? Like, I remember this was actually before going to uni, so I wouldn't say I sussed it and cracked it afterwards, because I clearly failed after that. But I went for a job interview, which was for IT support, and it was literally the job was, if someone has a problem with a computer, tell them to turn it off and on again. That was kind of the
Yeah.
job role. And I remember walking out of that interview and I was like, I'm not doing that. That's just
Good.
and I've got a feeling, I don't even know if I have ever heard back from them. It's probably because I had no interest whatsoever in doing that. And at the time I wasn't going to go to university. I'd decided, like, yeah, kind of academic life wasn't particularly for me. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to get a job. And then when I realized the jobs that were on offer, I actually applied for uni through clearing. So kind of like the last minute,
Okay.
wait a minute, I need a degree in order to do a job that feels like I'm moving forward and challenging myself. And so there's been a few turning points like that I think have
That's a great lesson in life, I
definitely
think,
helped.
is that I think a lot of people go through life. An old friend of mine who studied psychology said, we're very good at working out what we don't want.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want a blue door. I don't want a black door. I don't want a green door. I don't want a yellow
yeah.
door. The skill is in working out, but I do want a red door. And you worked out, I want a red door because I don't want all the other stuff that seems pretty awful.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of logic in that. I also like the rather than a to-do list, a what not to do list. Like, even things like, I try to limit screen time on my phone, and I've really cut down on social media time this year. Like, removed Facebook, don't kind of log into Twitter a couple of times a week rather than
Right.
actively using it every day, and just doing the not doing the stuff that I felt wasn't really kind of serving me well in terms of a good use of time, has freed up time in order to do the stuff that I feel is higher value.
And what have you filled the time with? So it's created space. So interestingly, I mean, you could fill it with running or relaxing or reading or, or working, or what do you find that you fill that space with?
So this might be a bit of a lockdown thing, but I actually think it is more kind of exercise. Going for a walk to me is not so much physical exercise, it's more mental. It's like just getting a bit of headspace to think during the day. So most lunchtimes I'll go for a half an hour walk just to make sure that I've got that. And to me, that's so much better than scrolling through Facebook and just seeing stuff that I don't really care about. So yeah, I think it's definitely been, maybe there's times where I do have time to be more productive. I've got more focus. But definitely for me, a big thing is switching off. I'm bad at that. And I again, don't think I've cracked it, but I think limiting some of the things that I think are not a good use of time in order to go for a walk, read a book, go for a run, whatever, sit and watch TV. It's kind of like, it's a weird goal of like, I feel like my goal is to do less, but my goal is to do less in order to rest, recover, and then be at my best when I need to be at my best.
Exactly. So another question around kind of Oxford Brookes. So how formative do you think Oxford Brookes was for you?
So I liked that Oxford Brookes was modular. So one of the issues I had at Bournemouth was, like I said, it's too technical. Oxford Brookes was allowed you to pick and choose what you were doing. So I dropped anything that was too technical and I replaced it with e-commerce, business, finance, some of the stuff that, again, I felt this is a really useful grounding for. I didn't know that I wanted to run a business at that point in time. I just found it more interesting, and I knew that I wasn't interested in the super technical stuff. I think it was useful from that perspective, just to start to push me down the right road. The one thing that was game changing for me was I did a placement year. So rather than having a 3-year degree, I did a 4-year degree, or in my case, a 5-year degree, because I actually repeated a year. But it was what should have been the 3rd year, was a placement year at a local web design agency called Domino Systems. And I think I got the job there because I said I would play in their 5-a-side football team. And I I'd heard of them because at the time they sponsored the Oxford United football team, and I think I was the only one that had ever mentioned this to them. Most people just thought it as pizzas.
Right.
And
Yes.
yeah, I think maybe in trying to justify the fact they'd spent a lot of money sponsoring a football team and nothing had come back from it, I think they recruited me as a form of validation. But I was on a low-paid 1-year internship. I was moved around quite a bit in terms of job roles, so from web development to systems support, and that was, in terms of just eye-opening to seeing what the different roles were, what I liked, what I didn't like, working with people as a team, working with clients, being held accountable. There's so many lessons that really fast-tracked me in that 1 year, to the point that, yeah, I mean, when I went back to my final year, I'd learned how to build websites. I'd learned how to make money online through Google AdSense. I could do SEO, and I had search
Wow.
rankings in Google. One of my projects in the final year was to build my own website, and I built a website about an Oxfordshire driving school, and I had a oxfordbrooks.ac.uk web space, and I optimized it in Google, and it got a load of traffic. I ended up, like, every day I was getting like 10 leads for, can you take me on a driving lesson? And in the
Brilliant.
end, I was like, I can drive, but I'm not an instructor.
Yeah.
So I replaced the inquiry form with Google AdSense, and I made money off of it instead. And
Wow.
I found that by doing this, I had a skill that was useful, and it was earning me. I mean, back then it was beer money.
Yeah.
If I can get £1 a click on an advert, then I'm doing well. I'm happy with
Absolutely.
that. So yeah, and I love that idea of building something, seeing it pay off, certainly in the form of traffic, and then in that case, monetization. And just curiosity took me down this route of this is the next step. Let's build that into something else. And
I mean,
so I started to build websites out from there.
and interestingly, so looking at the kind of thread of your kind of career, there was a time when you did web development work, as you say, and then you moved into SEO. And I was curious about why and how, but I think you've just explained it. You kind of started with the building the website, but ended up with the outcome, which is, I can make money out of this.
Yeah. And also, I think there's something I got into SEO in 2003. Google only started in 98, and I was very early. So in terms of my web development career, if you like, or web design career, I was probably more on the development side than I was design, but I was very average because I'd only just started. And there's
Right.
people there that have 10, 15, 20 years, maybe 20 years, yeah, well, at least 10 years experience, and I'm nowhere near their standard. So to get to that point is really hard. To become a leading SEO when everyone else is making it up and going along at the same time was actually very easy, because, and to be honest, it wasn't about being a leading SEO, and I've never really been that competitive against other people, but it was more about, how do I build something for myself and see that paying off, and see my own learning and development.
And when was this? What year was this?
Well, 2003. So I went back to uni in
Wow.
2004. And by 2006, I'd set up an agency, because by that point, in between, I was doing kind of building my own websites, blogging and writing about my learnings, and making money online for affiliate sites.
Yeah.
And through the blogging and just sharing my experience, more as a journal to myself, so I can remember what I did, or just documenting these experiments to solidify my own learning, because it's in writing.
Yeah.
Other people started reading that and engaging and linking back to me as a reference. And that started to lead into inquiries. So other people had the same challenges and problems that I didn't really expect people to read, but they did. They shared those problems. And before I knew it, I had people requesting that I work for them and help them to solve the same problems. So that's kind of how that developed, more into freelance at first, and kind of grew from that.
But what gave you the courage? I mean, at 22, you set up your own agency. I mean, that's quite remarkable, setting up a business at 22. That's really rare.
So I think I think I was 23, not that it makes that much difference.
23?
But there was a couple of things. One was I built up, so I was on a web development job. I mean, it's that long ago, I don't mind sharing. I think I was on like 17, 18 grand a year.
Yeah.
And I matched that salary with affiliate income that year. So what I was doing online, I realized that I was doubling my salary by working online and doing my own projects. And then it came to a point of I'm working like crazy out of hours and I'm putting much more effort and 100 times more passion into my own thing. And I had my uncle had lived in Australia for 12 years and always talked about it quite passionately. And I was just curious. I wanted to travel. I went for a job interview and tried to give the right answers to someone when he said, why don't you do the student thing, go traveling? And I gave what I thought was a professional answer of I want to start a career, I don't want to lose a year. And his response to me was, why not? If I was at your age, I'd do it. And, and I'd probably say that to people now, I think, looking back.
Yeah.
But so I did it. I took a year to go to Australia and I was like, okay, well, I've already got my 18 grand a year from my own projects.
Yeah.
If I've got a grand a month plus coming in,
fantastic,
and I can go and travel and enjoy myself without even needing to kind of get a job.
Yep.
That's perfect. And I think what I realized by the end of it was my plan was to do that as a freelancer. I was going to say I wasn't entrepreneurial at that point, but I guess I didn't realize I was entrepreneurial at that point. I was doing it. But
exactly.
I always thought that I would come back and get a job because that's just a natural thing that people do. But the year in Australia completely took the pressure off. If this fails, as long as I don't run out of money, I'm fine. And then I'll come back and I'll get a job. So it really took the pressure off of what do I need to do in order to live. If I needed to do, I know, bar work or something in Australia while I was there, I was prepared to do it. I didn't have to in the end, but
that's interesting, Kevin, is that you've what I would call you've de-risked your position. You've worked out actually the downside's never going to kill you because you've already got income coming in off your online business. Exactly. And rather than having to do bar work, you've got a skill that you can make money at, which allows you to be free. Yeah. And I think that's an important, I talk to people now about exactly this, young people, about, well, you could go stacking shelves or you could make money online using the skills that you've got. Yeah. You know, and they've got different outcomes. And
I love that model of passive income. Waking up in the morning and seeing that I've earned, it could be $10, it could be $100, it could be more, I don't know. But like just knowing that I've gone to bed at night and I've earned money in my sleep and woke up and there's a bigger number at the end of it, just because I've got a website that's generating sales or ad clicks or whatever it was. And I thought that was great. I mean, I would have been constantly logging in and just checking the numbers because that's what fueled me. And again, not really from a making money perspective, just more an excitement of this is working.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on also to, you were involved in a company called SEOptimise. Is that right?
Yeah.
What happened to that? What was the story?
So in Australia, I'd already decided I didn't want to be, I was going to say I didn't want to be a person. I am a person. But I didn't want to appear.
You definitely are a person.
Yeah. I didn't want to appear like I was just myself. And I think maybe that was the fact that I was 23 and it's like, who's going to hire a 23-year-old to do their work? So I kind of pretended to be a company. And I set up SEOptimise. Literally, it's a name. This is why we've hired a brand consultant for Resignal. But my logic behind it was, I do SEO. I want a brand name that sounds like we do SEO. And I probably wrote out a few variations and then just picked one. SEOptimise was the one I picked. I set that up as a brand. I moved I think I had a personal blog at the time and I started blogging on the SEOptimise blog. And as I started to get results for clients, I used to share those as case studies and the original case studies were my own. I had a property website I set up for it's like property in the Canary Islands or something like that. So my case study was I've got a website #1 for property for sale in Tenerife or something like that. And that again, I kind of let that website die in the end. I should have done more with it. But yeah, I think that kind of building a case and showing what I was doing to showcase the work, I just felt was more credible. And as soon as people got in touch, it was clear it was just me anyway, but I just wanted a brand presence and something that I could build up. So that's what I did in Australia. I worked probably more with English clients than I did Australian clients. They just thought that I worked weird hours. I'm not even sure I had a phone call with, I probably had a handful of phone calls all year. Most things were just dealt with over email back then. I guess Skype was definitely working because I remember calling back to kind of like family using Skype, but I didn't really use it for work. And yeah, I think just for me, having that brand presence was interesting. By the time I got back, so 2007, like I say, my plan was to get a job. There were a couple of agencies in London, and I didn't really want to move to London at that point in time. I think I might have even applied for a couple of jobs. I don't really remember, but I think my realization was I have a job when I got back, but I didn't have the confidence from a business perspective. I was like, still in my head, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a freelancer. Similar to your story of you go from that freelancer to a business owner. I hadn't made that step at that point in time. And I met up with someone who just won Oxfordshire Small Business of the Year as a dry cleaning business, but they were kind of going more digital at the time and had put a lot of work into their growth story. He just left that business and was very interested in Google, specifically on the paid search side. And we, I think, had lunch and kind of discussed some things and decided to build a company together. He had the business experience, I had the subject matter expertise, and together we worked at first from his kind of like kitchen, I think, in terms of just trying to build out more of a brand presence. He focused on the new business side of how do we, I think he put a small amount of money in to help build more of a professional website presence. And then he focused on new biz, I focused on serving the clients, and we built that up, I would say, very successfully. From the course of, I can't remember what our year one numbers were. I think my year one in Australia was about 30K maybe. It was a salary. It was as a freelancer, and I think from year two, I think we quite quickly got to 100K a year between the two of us once we'd partnered.
That's good.
And we grew to 1 million, even like 1.2, I think, within 6 years. So we had Oxfordshire clients that were the likes of Audley Travel, Mila, Oxford University Press, so really good brands within Oxfordshire. And that helped to grow more of a national presence. And alongside this...
Was that an agency? That was an SEO agency?
There's an SEO agency, I think, again, we figured it out as we went along. As we got busy, we figured out what to hire for, made some mistakes along the way. But in general, I think there were a lot of good learnings there. We hired some very smart people out of the universities. So Oxford University in particular was great for bringing in, on the paid search side, maths and physics students. That people like one of my first hires, Richard Fergie, was an A-star student in maths and was rowing for the Oxford University team. And so he wanted a job that allowed flexibility of working from 11 a.m. and leaving at 5 p.m. so that he could be on the water at 6 a.m. and then in the gym for 6 p.m. And
my word.
Yeah, and it was intense for him. But that allowed us to tap into talent because we had that flexibility and we're quite fresh and exciting in terms of what we're doing, certainly Oxfordshire wise. So we ended up attracting quite a lot of really good talent, and then we grew our reputation, we grew the team. We were always very good at publicizing our own reputation through thought leadership, blogging, speaking at events, yeah, we attracted some great brands. We were listed on the Deloitte Fast 50 for our, I think it's like 4 years worth of growth in terms of like the percentage. So
And
yeah,
what happened to that
really good
business?
story. So in 2012, we had a number of things. We'd set up a small London office. We'd stagnated in terms of growth. I think we got to a point where we focused on new business, but maybe not in the right way. Certainly my learnings now, it's easier to say looking back, but we now focus on a very select group of clients. So typically we work with 15 or so clients at one point in time. And I think back then I'm trying to do this from memory, but if I had to guess, I'd say we had about 35 clients and quite a long tail of budgets. Yeah. And I think what I realized was we'd had that fast growth period, and then I wouldn't say we went backwards, we stagnated, we stayed the same, and we had that leaky bucket syndrome of kind of having new biz worked. We were winning good clients, but we were dropping stuff out the other end, so we were standing still. And there are a few different things, but yeah.
And that leaky bucket, Kevin, is that, just for the audience, is like it's that churn. You churn clients and then you bring in new clients, but net you stay the same.
Yeah, exactly that. So it was kind of, oh, we've done great, we're celebrating all these new biz wins, and then it's like, wait a minute,
we've lost all these clients.
Yeah, exactly. So there were some learnings that way. I think for myself personally, this was definitely a hard time. So in 2012, sadly, my dad got cancer and died from cancer in April 2012. And for me, that was a big turning point personally, where I'd realized I'd reached a point where I was no longer enjoying it. I think that was the big thing for me. I felt like I was going into work, and I know for me, I'm at my best where it doesn't feel like work. I'm enjoying it. I'm excited, and I want to see things growing and improving and feeling like everything's kind of working together in the same direction. And I felt there were a few things that just didn't feel like we were moving as quickly as I wanted to move. And
also just emotionally traumatic. I mean, without delving into it because it's sensitive, but that must have massively affected you as a person. Your mental state of health and the way that you view the world.
It did, and I think it's something that, again, looking back on, maybe in that instance I should have just taken a break. But I think just the way I work, taking a break and not having anything to do was worse for me, where I'd rather throw myself into doing something almost to distract me, which even now, I don't even know if that's the right or wrong thing to do. It's just the way that I dealt with
I know you do it.
I mean,
having got to know you pretty well, that to me really resonates, is that when I see you stressed, you double down on work.
Yeah.
So you make yourself busy, focused, very outcome oriented, and you double down on the effort, because that's your way of dealing with it. And that's okay. That's the way you deal with things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. It's like, there probably are better ways, but that's my way. And
it's your way.
Some ways
everyone's
it
got
works
a different way.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think for me, it was just like that big life moment was, life's too short. There's things that I'm not happy with right now. And I've always really liked that accountability of, I almost flip it in the negative sense of, if everything goes wrong, that's my fault. I love that, because it's like, I'm completely accountable for this. And I really like, and this sounds weird, but I like blaming myself, because if there's something that's gone wrong, I don't like blaming others. I like to look at, okay, well, what could I do better next time? That's how I learn from it.
But that's a critical lesson in life, I think. I do the same thing. I'm like, if it goes wrong, those were choices I made. They weren't choices that were imposed on me. I made a choice.
Yeah. No, I don't want to feel hard done by. But at that point in time, it's definitely, life's too short. I want to do things in a different way. I know, I'm not saying that's the right way. It's just the way that I want to do things. And if I'm going to be a success, then I don't want to, or if I'm not going to be a success, I don't want to blame others. I want to do it in my own way, where if it doesn't work, that's fine. I've always been of the sense of, if I give it my best shot and I know I've done everything that I can and it doesn't work, I'm okay with that. I
Exactly.
tried. So
yeah, and you've learned from it. You are a big lifelong learner.
yeah.
So what happened? Why did Resignal start? So why did you? Was it 2012, 13?
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely a longer story here. I was speaking at, actually, I don't know if I was speaking, but I was definitely attending quite a lot of US conferences at that point in time. And I got to know a company called Blueglass, which had a huge reputation in the US as being a leading SEO and certainly content marketing agency at a time where people were not really talking about content marketing, certainly not digital PR and outreach. It was much more quite old school link building. And Blueglass had definitely got ahead of the curve and grown significantly, and they had big plans to grow, the UK being part of our ambition. And I had a conversation with them. I actually flew out to the US for a conference the day after my dad's funeral to it was and again, it was a conference in LA. I almost didn't go for obvious reasons, and I just decided I'm gonna go because, like,
you want to be busy.
it will
You want to
probably
keep
be good
yourself
for
busy.
me. It'll probably be good for me. And I had a conversation with people there around, okay, they wanted to grow into the UK market. I didn't know if it's the right thing or not, and I didn't know if this would materialize. They were talking to 3 or 4 different companies in the UK about partnering with them, and so I had to decide at that point in time, do I kind of decoupled the decision a little bit into, do I want to leave SEOptimise, yes or no? And if it was a yes, then the next decision was, do I want to partner with Blueglass to form a company? But I had to separate those two because there was no kind of middle ground. I couldn't say I would do both because there was uncertainty over the Blueglass side might not happen. And so I'd made that decision to go alone. I took a smaller team in London, a small group of clients, and some cash, and turned that into an agency that temporarily I branded as Quattro, which was a name that I found on a logo website.
Didn't know that.
It was a brand that was set up that I think lasted for about 6 months because we did do the Blueglass deal. That went through, and it was announced as Blueglass acquire Quattro, and we become the UK arm of Blueglass as a group. And again, I think that there's a longer story here. I think the summary is it didn't work to plan at all. The US company collapsed, and we were left in a situation where we ended up buying the trademark and keeping the brand more from a continuity perspective for our team and clients, because
it was messy as well, because I think I was involved with you around that time. It was like,
it was messy.
The ownership structure and the trademark and the reputation, and it was messy.
It was, I would use the word toxic, honestly, in terms of how it was dealt with, certainly internally, and even the industry reputation around it. But we'd made a call that I just rebranded from SEOptimise to Quattro to Blueglass. I don't want to backtrack and pick another brand or rewind and go back to the old one. I want to just stick with what we built up in the UK. I'd realised that our clients only really cared about what we were doing for them. They didn't really care if we were part of a US group or not. And we continued, but then we'd always knew we didn't want to be Blueglass long term. We just wanted that continuity for our team's sake more than anything else. And so the Resignal brand was very much, now we put our own stamp on things. And again, I never want to take credit from someone else in this, but at the same time, I also don't want negative reputation for someone else. So it was kind of our way of saying, okay, well, let's build our own brand. We became Resignal, and then it's judge us based on us. If that's good or bad, that's fine. But it's based on what we're doing, and that's given us a chance to, again, reposition ourselves and evolve within the market and put our own stamp on how we do things.
And what do you think you've learned about kind of running an agency business over the last, wow, what's now been probably, 20 odd years, I guess,
Yeah.
of kind of being in business and running agencies? If you were talking to someone now who was 22 and they were thinking of starting up an agency, what advice would you be giving them?
Um, it's one of those where, again, I feel like the advice, and I think a lot of people say this, if I was to do it again, I'd do the same again, because if you get told what to do, you don't do it. You have to fail, learn, and make mistakes. And I always think
Yeah,
any successes I've had have been because I've been bad at something at first and learned from that. But I think definitely making your own mistakes to do things. I feel like I've done every job role within the business, and that to me is great because I know it. My
yeah,
gut feel, I think, is really intuitive now, in terms of if things are going badly, I can sniff it from a mile
yeah,
away. Like, I know that doesn't look right. We need to just
exactly.
fix that. And that's the sort of thing now that just experience brings. And likewise, when there's opportunities of like, actually, we can turn this into something. Why don't we try and do this? And so I think actually being, kind of in the weeds a little bit in terms of different roles and learning has been really important. But I think my biggest learning now is how to take myself out of that. So some of the thing, even what I said earlier, like limiting social media time, for me, it's
Yeah,
not so much how do I make sure I know every SEO update that's happening every hour. It's much more how do I build a team that knows what's going on, and how do I make sure that we've now got, say, a dashboard of information across the key functions of the business, from client servicing to financial performance to new biz pipelining and everything else, that I can see, okay, well, we're going in the right direction because these are all of our key metrics that we need to be moving forward. And then it's how do you have a team underneath that that can be
yeah.
accountable for different things and empower them and build them up. So I think the big tip, if I was going to pick one, is hire great people, but also have that structure of, how to get the best out of them and hold them to account to what is most important.
So, how old are you now? I've forgotten.
39.
39. So you've probably got 30 years, if you wanted to, of work in you, probably, where people keep paying for your company and your services going
Yeah.
forward. What does that 30 years hold, do you think?
I have no idea. I love that, because it's kind of like, I don't want to have it all mapped out. I like
Yeah,
I think because we're in a fast-paced industry and stuff changes. And again, it's not, I don't even want to kind of silo myself to SEO as an industry in particular. I kind of feel like I want to be open-minded to, these are the opportunities that will come along. And at that point in time, I don't want to say no to something that's a great opportunity because I've already mapped something out 10
yeah,
years ago if this is where I should be right now. So
yeah,
I actually love that almost like open road ahead of me of
yeah,
this could go in any direction, which again might sound scary to some people, but I prefer that. I don't know at that 30 years time if I want to stop working well ahead of that, if I want to carry on well
yeah,
beyond that. I don't know. I think it comes down to, again, what I was saying of kind of enjoying what you're doing. I think when I've realized it's time to change, it's when I've had too many days in a row or weeks in a row where it's like, I'm not enjoying this. This isn't fun
exactly.
anymore. That's my time to change. And when I'm in the middle of that, it's, let's carry on. Let's make the most of it. I'm excited. And there might even be a point where it's like, okay, well, I do want to plan ahead and think further, because I don't want to lose that excitement and I want to
Yeah.
make sure it does go somewhere. But
And,
yeah,
and
I
what
kind of,
what gets you out of bed in the morning? Why do you get up every day and work as hard as you do and maintain the kind of excitement and creativity that you do? What gets you out of bed? What's the motivator?
I think it's a growth mindset. I
Right.
just absolutely love doing something that improves. And this is, again, kind of why, if you take, like, going back to that job I described of IT support, turning on a computer and turning it off again, I love the idea of almost like compound interest of what I'm doing is every day we're helping
beauty of
to
compound interest. Absolutely.
but it really is. It's like what we're doing. Yes, it kind of like beat yesterday is kind of like almost like the mantra in some ways of like how do we get better every day and how do we keep improving and take what we had, and today we're going to develop, we're going to learn more, and we're going to push forward from there. And obviously it's not going to be like that. There will be kind of more ups and downs as we go along, but
it certainly will.
Yeah, I think it's that growing, it's that learning and improvement. There's a measurement along the way in order to check it's on track, but I don't think it's about that. I think it's more a gut feel of if I go to bed at night and feel like I've moved a needle, I'm happy, and that's where I'm pushing things forward. And I know that even if it's not obvious on that day, that week, that month, I've got better at looking back at thinking sometimes I'm on a hamster wheel going nowhere, and then I'm like, wait, where was I this time last year? And like this is a good example. Like if you look at where we were as a company, kind of early stages of lockdown last year versus today, you'd think that's 10 years ago, not one.
Absolutely. No, you really would.
Yeah.
We've grown 10 years in 18 months. I mean, you've done a remarkable job, I think, with the agency, like remarkable. Yes, the market's been kind in our space because we're in e-commerce, sure.
Yeah,
but you've done a remarkable job of growing the business in the last 18 months, which all applause to you. So 2 more questions and then we'll close. Really simple. Book. I know you read a lot. What book would you recommend people to read? For whatever reason, doesn't matter what.
There's loads of them, but I think one of them I quite liked more recent, I'd say recently, maybe 18 months ago, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I think for me, I've been given this feedback before by someone that said I'm the most focused person they've met. And that's because I'm just very selective I say no to a lot because it just doesn't feel right. And it's kind of that, it's either a no or a hell yes kind of mentality sometimes of like, you have to, I think you have to go for it. And I think a lot of that is in the habits. So kind of the routine for me is really important, whether that's exercise or learning or just actually pushing something forward that's really important. Like new biz might be a good example, but getting into those habits and routines in order to keep the momentum moving forward and that progress step by step, day by day, like that 1% improvement on small things but focused, I think is really powerful. Whereas if you're trying to do everything, you might make a 0.1% increase on everything, but feel like it's not really adding up. So I think that book was just good for me, just to almost solidify some concepts around routine is a good thing. And keeping the focus on what you really need to do and what's most important.
Very good. And the last question, in your 37, 38, 39 years on the planet, I've got a bad memory.
39, yeah.
39 years on the planet. I have got a bad memory. I think it's age, 39 years on the planet. What's the kind of the big thing that if we were sat in the pub just having a drink, hopefully in the days when we can soon, what would you say is like kind of the big thread in your life over 39 years that's been pretty consistent?
I think there's a few things. I think I've done quite a lot of work recently, kind of like coaching work around just personal values and things of just knowing what's important to me. And a lot of it, I think, comes from, again, kind of like family values. I think for me, it's not so much success in terms of external success. I don't really care about that much. It's kind for me, it's the internal of, am I giving it my best shot? Am I making time for friends and family? Am I doing things that, again, it's like, it's outside of, it's having that balance, I think is really important. And I think as a thread, I've had moments where there's been imbalance and I've kind of been way too much kind of like focused on the work side, maybe neglecting even like my own health and fitness as well as personal relationships. And I think for me, the big theme or the big learning is to bring it back to when I'm at my best, there's a balance across all of those. I'm seeing friends and family. I'm running or exercising and doing stuff that's good for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm working hard. If I'm just working hard, I'm not actually doing as well at work as I could be if I was doing less and balancing it out. So I think that's been probably a theme for me of how do I get the best out of myself. And then, yeah, it's kind of just, I think one of the big things for me is,
that's a great three-legged stool.
Yeah.
You know, friends and family, work, health and fitness. You know, that's a great three-legged stool for life.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And I think one of the themes just in terms of values is I don't like to take myself too seriously. And again, maybe that's I'm competitive against myself and I always want to grow, as I've described. I couldn't care less what other people are doing. That doesn't interest me at all. Everyone's running their own race. And I feel like as soon as I start to get bogged down in things like that, I'm like, that's my trigger of, wait, I need a break. Yeah. And I think when I'm, kind of more humor, kind of have humor, joking, kind of like not taking myself too seriously, even to the point of typical British, I try not to take the mickey out of other people too much, but I'll take the mickey out of myself quite easily. It's kind of like knowing that feeling of just like, okay, I'm at my best now. I feel like I'm not under too much pressure, or even if I am under pressure, I'm doing it in what I feel is like a proactive, positive way.
Brilliant. Kevin, it's been really, really interesting. Like stuff I didn't know about you, stuff you've been very honest about how you feel about things, and that kind of, the three-legged stool of life, I think is brilliant. So thank you for being honest and open about kind of who you are as a person, and hopefully the audience has learned a lot about you.
Okay, brilliant. I found the same with yours actually. So more than happy to share the other way around.
Good. No, I really enjoyed it. Okay, brilliant. All right, well, have a good weekend and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, bye.